And this is the picture that I just showed you is a picture of a valley that I'm heading into today. And I'd like to talk about movement, vision and movement. And I'm here to say, after many years of research and clinical practice, that our eyes are basically our GPS system. And that when they don't work together, it's definitely going to affect our balance, our orientation, and movement. And unfortunately, I've said this many times that the eye chart measurement it doesn't cut it in terms of really assessing our own GPS system. They need to take a look at, how the eyes and the brain and the body work together. So where does movement fit into this? Well, I'll tell you a brief story. About 15 years ago, I attended this workshop, and it was called Continuum Movement. And it was an amazing workshop because the teacher, who was the founder, her name's Emily Conrad, she developed this process that actually helped people return to their fluid body. And since we're made up of 70% fluid, one of the things that happens as we age is that fluidity dries up. I see it all the time in the eyes, in conditions like cataracts and macular degeneration. But when we lose our fluidity, part of the reasons why we lose it is because of how we move in the world. And, our world has become so roboticized. I mean, if we just take a look at fitness as an example, if you go to a gym and you're doing the Stairmaster or you're doing, the treadmill, lifting weights, those are very linear movements. They're very back and forth. And when you do a lot of repetitive movements, a couple of things happen. Number one, the fluidity in your tissue tends to dry out. And number two, if you continue that repetitiveness in your movements, whatever it is, eventually you're going to have some kind of an injury. And I think it's one of the fastest ways that we age based on how we move our body. So when I met Emily, the work of Continuum is about combining different sounds, different movements, but the movements are spiral, wave, and pulsating movements. So they're not a back and forth movement. They can be really large movements like moving your legs or your arms or your whole body, or they can be small movements like your fingers or your toes. And the other piece of Continuum has to do with breathing, your breathing patterns. And I describe Continuum as a way to kind of stir the waters in our bodies. Well, after that first workshop, I began studying very closely with Emily, and a couple years later, I took one of her Wellsprings practitioner program, learning how to apply Continuum to patients. And I was already a craniosacral therapist. And Emily recognized the importance of the visual system to the body. So she was really excited that I was studying with her. And I spent 3 weeks with her. Her studio was in Santa Monica. And it was an amazing immersion, being in that level of fluid movement for 3 weeks. And as I evolved, I spoke to her about becoming a Continuum teacher because I started to do more group work and less private practice. And especially when I was leading retreats at the Esalen Institute, I felt that Continuum was a great way for us to integrate a lot of the vision and perception work that I offer people. One of the quotes of Emily is that she says that movement is who we are. So in other words, movement affects our thinking, movement affects our perceptions, Movement affects our relationships. And I would probably substitute movement for vision. So I think vision also does those same things. So today, when I, remember, which is more of the time now than in the past, I remember how to regain my fluidity. And if I have to do repetitive movements, or, I enjoy riding my bike and doing those kinds of things, that I neutralize those repetitive movements with more fluid-based experiences. And I'll talk more about fluid movement in future talks, but I just wanted to introduce the idea today that maybe take a break from all of your roboticized movements and think about spiral wave and pulsation when you walk or when you move. Okay, I'm going to sign off. Thanks for listening.